Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we are taking a fantastic, and I mean truly mind-bending macro to micro journey into the fundamental building blocks of life itself. We spend so much of our time interacting with the large, visible world around us, right? The people, the pets, the trees. But did you know you literally have trillions of invisible units working inside of you right at this very second? Today, we're going to shrink all the way down to uncover this bustling, nonstop universe that exists right under our noses, on our skin, and inside every single living thing on this planet. It's going to be a fun one. Okay, let's dive right into this.
So let me start off by asking you a question. What do you, a microscopic amoeba floating around in a pond somewhere, and a massive, towering, giant redwood tree have in common? I want you to take a second to really think about that. Because on the surface, you couldn't possibly be more different. One is a highly complex human being reading this right now, one is a tiny microscopic speck of slime, and the other is a massive structure of wood and leaves reaching hundreds of feet into the sky. Yet at the absolute most basic level of existence, you share the exact same biological foundation. We're all built from the exact same type of microscopic machinery, and we're all operating on the exact same fundamental rules of biology. Here is our roadmap for today's journey. Number 1, the building blocks of life. Number 2, unicellular versus multicellular organisms. Number 3, meet the cell organelles. Number 4, plant and animal cell differences. And finally, number 5, why cell biology matters today. Okay, let's kick things off with section 1, the building blocks of life. From the visible to the microscopic. Think about all the living things you interact with every single day. You've got the family dog, the trees lining your street, maybe the grass in your backyard, or even, and we've all been there, the mold that accidentally grew on that forgotten piece of bread way in the back of the kitchen pantry. We can easily see humans, animals, plants, and molds with the naked eye. But what is the invisible foundation actually making them function? When you study biology, it's really tempting to only look at the massive interconnected systems, things like whole forests or the human circulatory system. But to truly understand how those large, beautiful systems operate, you have to peel back the layers. You literally have to go smaller and smaller, zooming way past the visible organs, past the tissues, until you hit the absolute baseline of life. And that zooming in brings us right to our core definition for today. A cell is the fundamental, basic unit of life that makes up all living organisms, period. Fun fact, when scientists way back in the 1600s first looked at cork through some of the earliest microscopes, the tiny little boxes they saw reminded them of small, sparse rooms, like monks' quarters, or cells, which is exactly where the name comes from. So the crucial takeaway here is that whether you're looking at a human being, a soaring eagle, or that tiny speck of mold on the bread, cells are the starting point for all of it. They are literally the microscopic Lego bricks of life. In fact, nothing out there can even be considered living unless it is made up of at least one of these incredible, self-contained structures. Moving on to section 2, unicellular versus multicellular organisms, the great divide of one versus many. So while all life is made of cells, life definitely comes in vastly different packaging sizes. A unicellular organism consists of just a single cell, while multicellular organisms are made up of many, many cells. Think about the incredible contrast in survival strategies here, because it's actually fascinating. A unicellular organism is the ultimate one-man band. It has to do absolutely everything by itself. Eat, breathe, reproduce, excrete waste, and move. All within the strict confines of one solitary microscopic cell wall. It is an entire independent universe surviving in a single drop of water. Meanwhile, multicellular organisms, they divide all that labor up among thousands, millions, or even trillions of cells. They're all working together as a giant, highly specialized team where no single cell has to carry the entire burden. Let's make this a bit more concrete by picturing some real-world examples. Unicellular examples include bacteria, that amoeba we mentioned earlier in the pond, and yeast. Yes, the very same single-celled yeast used to make your bread rise and brew your favorite beverages. On the multicellular side of things, we have humans, all animals, and all plants. And to really put that multicellular scale into perspective, every single time you look in the mirror, you aren't just looking at you as a single entity. You are looking at a highly coordinated, multicellular society of roughly 30 trillion individual cells. 30 trillion, and they're all communicating and working in perfect harmony just to keep you standing there. All right, on to section 3. Meet the cell organelles, the tiny parts that keep the cell alive. We're going to zoom in even further now, right inside the cell itself. An organelle is a tiny cell part that performs specific essential functions within a cell. Now, I want you to completely throw away the idea of a cell as just some microscopic, structureless blob of jelly. Instead, imagine it as a bustling, highly organized metropolis. Because just like a real city needs physical infrastructure to survive, think about it. A city needs borders, it needs power plants, a central government, transport systems. A cell relies on those exact same concepts to stay alive. The organelles are the specialized buildings and the dedicated workers that make this microscopic city function flawlessly, completely around the clock. So let's take a little walking tour and explore the basic structures of our cellular city. First up, the cell membrane. This is the city border, the heavily guarded front gates, if you will. It actively controls exactly what is allowed to enter and leave the cell. It's the bouncer, keeping the bad stuff out, letting the good nutrients in, and expelling waste. Next, we have the cytoplasm. Think of this as the city grounds, or the very atmosphere itself. It's this jelly lake material where all the other cell parts are found, and it provides the perfect fluid medium for all sorts of vital chemical reactions to happen. Then we have the vacuole. These are essentially the city's massive warehouses, or water towers. They act as essential storage facilities to hold water, nutrients, and sometimes even waste, keeping the rest of the cell totally tidy and fully functional. Now let's move to the real heavy hitters of our microscopic city: power and control. First up is the nucleus. This is absolute City Hall. It's the central command center, holding all the vital genetic information, the DNA blueprint, and it issues the exact orders for how the cell should behave, how it should grow, and when it should divide. It's the boss. And then we have the mitochondria. Look, if you remember literally one single thing from high school biology, it's probably the phrase, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. And you know what? It's completely true. Its sole job is to take the fuel that comes in and release energy from food, powering every single bustling process in our cellular metropolis. Without the mitochondria, the power grid fails and the whole city goes totally dark. Let's look at Section 4, Plant and Animal Cell Differences. What makes the flora different from the fauna? So we've built our basic cellular city, but here is where things get really fascinating. The architecture of the city actually changes depending on whether it belongs to a plant, the flora, or an animal, the fauna. Plants have some very unique needs to survive, and so they evolved specialized, plant-specific organelles. First is the cell wall. Now, unlike animals, plants don't have a skeletal structure made of bone, right? They don't have a spine to hold them up. So they rely on a rigid cell wall that sits right outside the membrane, giving the plant cells strict support and shape. It's like a sturdy outer fortress wall that literally allows trees to grow hundreds of feet tall without collapsing under their own weight. Second, the chloroplast. Since plants obviously can't walk around to find a meal like an animal can, they have chloroplasts. These act as highly efficient biological solar farms. They capture sunlight and use it to help plants make their own food through a process called photosynthesis. Let's look at a direct side-by-side comparison between the two, because this really brings it all together. Notice the shared foundations here. Cell membrane, yes, both have it. Gotta protect the borders. Cytoplasm, yes for both. The nucleus, acting as city hall, and mitochondria for power, yes, both plants and animals desperately need a control center and energy to live. But the differences at the bottom are key to the whole thing. The cell wall for rigid structural support, plants have it, animals do not. The chloroplast to manufacture food directly from the sun, plants have it, animals definitely do not. So, to quickly summarize this grand comparison, it's exactly like a Venn diagram. Plant and animal cells share a massive core set of machinery just to stay alive. The nucleus, the mitochondria, the membrane, that is our shared biological heritage, the stuff we all have in common. But they differ wildly on the edges, based entirely on how they live and survive out there in the wild. Animals move around and hunt. Plants stand totally still and harvest the sun. Specialization all the way down at the cellular level is the absolute key to life's incredible diversity on Earth. Finally, Section 5. Why cell biology matters today, connecting the microscopic world to our daily lives. You know, it is so easy to think of all of this as just textbook science that doesn't really affect you, but I want to connect this invisible microscopic world directly to your daily routine. Because the truth is, cells dictate absolutely everything we do. Let's just look at health and hygiene. Remember those unicellular organisms we talked about? Bacteria? Understanding that single-celled bacteria are literally everywhere is the foundation of modern health and medicine. When food goes bad in your fridge, it's not just getting old, it's actually a microscopic unicellular feast taking place right on your leftovers. More than that, this is the entire reason we emphasize proper hygiene. When you wash your hands, you aren't just washing visible dirt away. You are actively managing the microscopic cellular populations, your microbiome on your skin. You're preventing illness and keeping yourself safe from unseen, single-celled invaders. It's crowd control on a microscopic level. And look at the environment in agriculture too. Those rigid cell walls and brilliant green chloroplasts we talked about, they are the literal reason we can survive on this planet. Plant cells power all of our crops, the vegetables on your dinner plate, and the vibrant plants in your community. Because chloroplasts give plants the unique ability to turn raw sunlight into food, they form the absolute baseline of the entire global food chain. Every single bite of food you eat can eventually, if you trace it back far enough, be linked to this cellular process. Without that specific tiny green organelle, agriculture wouldn't exist, and frankly, neither would we. We owe it all to the chloroplast.
Wow, we've covered an incredible amount of ground today, zooming all the way from the macro down to the microscopic. But I want to leave you with a provocative thought as we wrap up. Knowing that this vast, bustling, invisible world of unicellular and multicellular machinery exists, how does your daily hygiene, your daily habits, and your environment actively affect the microscopic organisms living on and around you right at this very moment? It is a truly fascinating thought, isn't it? Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the building blocks of life. Keep asking questions, keep exploring the unseen world, and I will see you on the next Explainer.